Thank you for joining us. I'm Alexandra Mitchell, the programming manager at SeriesFest, and I'm joined with Sally McLean, who is the creator, writer, director, and editor of Shakespeare Republic, All the Webs of Stage, the Lockdown Chronicles. Thank you for joining me, Sally.
Thank you for having me here, Alex. It's wonderful to actually be here.
Wonderful. My first question, what was the inspiration for this project?
Yes. Well, Shakespeare Republic is a web series that's now, this is its third season. So it's been running since 2015. And we were supposed to actually start shooting in the normal way that you film things, such as get a crew together, go to a location, or be in the same room for actually what was season 3. And of course, COVID hit and everything went into lockdown here in Melbourne, and as it did with pretty much everywhere else in the world. And also being an actor, I kind of sat there going, well, all my acting work's dried up. We can't go and shoot the new season. Any other projects I had on the slate were just on hold immediately. And then I suddenly thought, well, wait a sec. We've been doing these, bite-sized Shakespeare, as we call it, of these monologues and pieces from Shakespeare's plays. And there's one actor. So maybe what we could do is actually do this unconventionally and continue using one actor, but we could set the whole thing in COVID. One of our tenets for Shakespeare Republic is taking Shakespeare's work and placing it very firmly in the 21st century. And, we were living through a very 21st century thing of COVID-19. And so it was like, well, that makes sense to actually take his characters and put them in lockdown, essentially. Can we do that? And I went through, obviously, all the canon and went, oh, my goodness, there are so many speeches that talk about isolation or being cut off from people, or some form of being separate or other from the rest of society. And so we realized that, actually we could do this. COVID itself was actually the inspiration for doing it. And also being unemployed at that point because there was no work going on, and realizing that just with the one actor and my directing the one actor, that could be done through the internet. So we actually also then got to expand cast from just being Melbourne based, which had been our previous, requirement because it was expensive to fly cast in from elsewhere. Suddenly I could be working with actors that are based in the US and based in the UK and also based here. So that was even more exciting. It suddenly meant I could work with actors that I knew overseas, and also new actors that I hadn't yet had a chance to work with or meet. So that's how it started. It was just realizing, much as we were saying before, Zoom was a great medium, and it turns out you can rehearse and direct people through Zoom as well as actually having conversations. So that was how it all began. COVID started, and it just seemed to be a good fit, really, for what we were doing.
Wow. Could you talk a little bit more about having to direct and film through Zoom and what that experience was like, especially since you guys had done it in a more traditional way before?
Yeah, that was interesting. It was such a fascinating process for me. I mean, again, I had rehearsed with some actors through season 2 on Skype. Remember Skype, that thing, that other program that we used to have? Anyway, so I'd actually, I'd actually worked with other actors rehearsing them because they couldn't be in Melbourne. They were away touring with theatre companies or whatever. So the rehearsal side of it wasn't completely foreign to me through the computer. But the directing thing was a whole new ballgame, because of course, not only was I directing actors in real time while they had their smartphones set up and were filming themselves in their homes or in their back gardens or wherever they were, they themselves also had to be their own crew because we didn't have any crew, obviously. Some people had people help that they were living with, which was helpful. Would help them set up the shots or whatever, get them framed properly. There were cases where we had cast members whose siblings were at home with family, and so their sibling would be moving the smartphone around and then picking me up on the laptop and moving me around the room as well to get a look at the shots. And it was kind of crazy. But the way I sort of, again, working with actors, I mean, I'm an actor who happens to have also had training and worked behind the scenes and now directs and does all the rest of it. But not every actor has that skill set. So it also meant creating a technical Bible for all the actors to say, this is how you frame a shot. This is how you do your lighting. This is how you deal with sound so we get good sound. Please don't be recording right next to the fridge because it's going to make a noise. You might not notice it, but we will on the other end. So yeah, that was a 35-page Bible in the end that I ended up creating with all the different, and it sort of kept growing because I'm like, well, while I'm here, I may as well do a whole thing about, wardrobe choices and what works on camera and what doesn't. And also look at production design, what kind of, just know what's behind you in a shot. If you don't want something there, move it out of the way. And again, this was sort of early COVID. So doing Zoom, even though people were starting to get used to this idea of video conferencing, we hadn't really been doing it long enough for people to be really savvy about it. So, I was saying things like, if there's things sitting on your shelf, like photos of your family that you don't want on the final film, please remove them so we can't see them. So that was that, and it was useful to do that. And they were all great, bless them. And then some of the actors were just amazing. Some who'd never worked in crew before, but would come up with these brilliant inventions to solve a technical problem they discovered when they were working on it themselves at home. Creating mic stands and camera tripods and things to do swooping shots and crazy sound. Someone got their wife's headband that's really furry because they were filming outside and we had wind noise problems in rehearsal, and they found their wife's headband was really furry and they went, oh, that's right, they do that on microphones on set, don't they? I'll just wrap that around the microphone, and it did work as a really good microphone muff. So yeah, they were brilliant. So that's how we ended up doing it. A lot of trial and error. But again, because I've got the background I have, I could talk everyone through any major dramas they were having during the rehearsal period and the tech run period. We had tech runs for everything as well. And the actual filming, you just had to be patient. Some of the shots, some of the episodes took an hour to film because we just had perfect conditions, no sound problems, and everything went really well. Others took 6 hours to film because, the neighbours would suddenly turn the music up, or you'd suddenly get all these cars driving past the house for some strange reason that was, causing sound problems. Mainly sound issues were the problem. But yeah, I mean, and again, I kept saying to them, at least we have the luxury of we don't have, 25 crews standing around right now waiting for us. It's just us. So that was how we kind of dealt with it on the fly. And it was kind of odd because it was almost like being in a director's nest on set, being in a box like this. Some of the guys actually set up little monitors that were sending wireless feeds. I don't even know how they did it, but anyway, I could actually see what was happening through the camera, which was amazing. But quite often we'd also set the laptop or the tablet or whatever I was on directing, so I could sort of partially see the screen of their smartphone, but then actually see them in real time. And because I also direct in theatre, it was actually not that tough for me to be able to just focus on performance and then just check the shots back, which is what we do. They pick up the laptop and go, let's just check that back. Is the framing okay? Nothing's, yeah, good, all right, we can move on. So yeah, so that's how we did it. But it brought us all together. I mean, we bonded, all of us, even though I only was working individually with each actor, and there were 24 of them. Crazy, 24 episodes. But even though it was that one-on-one, we had a Facebook group that we all sort of talked on communally, and we shared, updates and snapshots of what was going on. So we kind of formed this quite strong bond actually as a group too, which was really lovely, especially at a time when we were all so separate from each other. So yeah, it was good.
So you all had to get very inventive. I'm really surprised to hear everything that the actors were able to set up and kind of create, especially if they hadn't been on a tech crew before. Is there anything from this experience that you think you would continue as you create more?
That's a really good question. I think for me, definitely realizing that you could get quite deeply into text and quite do some really good deep work with actors via internet, video conferencing on the internet. I wouldn't necessarily, therefore, now look at an actor going forward and say, oh, you can't be around for the rehearsal period, because we always rehearse for this series and for all the work that I do. I don't just do Shakespeare, but for everything that I do, because I'm also a writer. I actually would consider rehearsing with them via this kind of medium for other projects if required. It's obviously not quite the same as being in the same room, but it was surprising to me how deep we could go into the text. If the actor on the other end of the call is just as invested, which they all were, you can do a lot of really good work there. And it's quite extraordinary to see just how much you can form that connection through the screen to each other. So yeah, that is something I might look at taking forward. So if an actor, again, was off filming or wherever, interstate or overseas, and couldn't be here for that period, that wouldn't necessarily make them knock them off the list for being involved in another production. But apart from that, I don't know that I'd want to repeat it. I have to be honest, it was stressful. It was stressful, and really weird hours, because of course everyone was in different time zones. So I was directing at 4 a.m. my time, or midnight, or 6 a.m. I mean, it was just getting a bit silly. So yeah, I think probably, I think that probably one of the major things I'd take away would be the rehearsal process, potentially. That's probably about it.
Very, very fair. Well, thank you so much, Sally, for sharing this project with us and allowing us to share it with our audience. And thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much, Alex.